All right, thank you, Aaron. I appreciate some of the things that you said, primarily because they lead into uh, some of the things that I'm going to talk about, and I want y'all to note that I saw on Aaron's title slide he still had associate professor, but in a few weeks he will essentially be able to call himself Professor Smith from now on. Just want to make that note so y'all know that uh, we finally got him there. He's there. But the the export side of what Aaron was talking about is really key to a lot of what's going on in the beef industry, and the value of the dollar is extremely high. And if y'all keep up with anything Mexico, uh, they recently had elections, and it was kind of a one-sided election, and I think in that country they're tickled with it to some degree, but all of a sudden the peso is tremendously devalued relative to the dollar, and y'all know how much business we do with Mexico, not just with beef, but with any products that we have. And from that aspect, the inability to move very much beef into Mexico could be problematic to some degree. At the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if we don't see more cattle coming out of Mexico into the U.S. feeding system. One, because it, there's more dollars to be had selling them into the U.S. system. Number two, the U.S. feeding system needs those cattle because they're going to be competing for very few cattle in that are domestic cattle. So I do think we'll probably see an uptick of some sort in cattle coming across the border. Not talking about people coming across the border. Uh, I think President Biden had an address yesterday on something on that, but it wouldn't be a bad thing for cattle to come across the border to help meet some of the needs and demands that our domestic consumer has for beef. But anyway, we still see strong cattle prices. I think there were some folks that thought prices would just inevitably and forever go up, go up, go up. Uh, they've stalled, and I think that's probably a good thing. Um, I'll get a little deeper into that. We're still sitting here waiting on heifer retention and what's going to happen there. Uh, there are some folks that are going to have a hard time, and then there's others that are going to really benefit from the current price environment. So let's just start with slaughter cattle prices. Hitting around 190 is where we've been the past few weeks. Um, a year ago, like 1 year ago, I was at a meeting and everybody, that there were talks of tremendously high finished cattle prices, and when you start breaking that down into what that means for beef prices at the consumer level, it just doesn't pencil very well. And Aaron has already made mention of some of the pinch and the squeeze that the consumer is feeling, some of those headwinds that we have um, from that standpoint. I still believe that we're going to see uh, real estate and homes that have been purchased in the past 2 or 3 years that folks are paying high interest rates on them. I think they're going to end up having a fire sale on some of those homes. So if you're in the business of a new home, just be patient, because I do think there's going to be an opportunity there. But when that happens, that also is negative for any of our consumer goods, such as beef, because we're probably going to see these consumers trade down to lower valued products in some form or fashion. The whole thing is people are wondering if the slaughter cattle price could get to $2. Right now, that doesn't look very promising in any form or fashion. We really didn't have the increase in prices that we would normally see leading into the grilling season. And I guess that's not very surprising given that we were already at really, really strong price levels. We've been sitting around $3 on these 550-pound steers in the state. I know there's plenty of really good cattle that weigh 550. They're bringing well over $3, but as an average across the state, that $2.90 to $3 range is where 550-pound steers are sitting. Most of your cow calf guys should be making really good money at this, despite the inflationary pressure and increase in input cost. Because when you're figuring $1,500 to $1,600 per head revenue, there should be some mighty good profits coming in. I do think it's very important how we manage those profits over the next 2 or 3 years. Some folks will be wanting to go out and buy a new piece of equipment to reduce their tax burdens. I'll fast forward to 7 to 8 weight steers just so you can look at what prices have been doing. I'm not necessarily speaking specifically on either one, but I think we do need to think about what we do with some of those profits, because reducing your tax burden can be beneficial if there's a piece of equipment or something that is needed. At the same time, we probably have more people that should put more dollars into renovating pasture, upgrading facilities, working facilities, fences. So the problem is those things all require a lot more work than going and buying a new hay baler or a new truck or a new cattle trailer. Those are easy ways of getting rid of $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, $70,000 and writing that off. Whereas a lot of folks probably need to put a few more of those dollars into the long-term business aspect, that when things get squeezed again in 3 or 4 or 5 years, that they have good production at a reduced cost for that standpoint. Moving into slaughter cow prices, slaughter cow prices have just been going and blowing. The main reason for that is because we need the lean grinding beef. There's a tremendous demand for ground product. That's part of what we've already seen with the trading down from consumers. If you really want to grill, yeah, sure, you can go out and buy a $28 steak. But it might be better to go buy the $7 to $8 a pound hamburger meat, and you can still go grill, and you can probably eat beef a few more times than when you bought that high end steak. Talking about high end steaks, when I was in Knoxville on Monday, Charlie Martinez showed me a picture of a steak from a Kroger in Knoxville, and the original price was $28, and they had marked it down to $14. And I'm going to say that's probably because they bought more than what the consumer desired during Memorial Day and leading up to this Father's Day deal. When you've got too much product on hand, you still got to get it moved. And I think what that showed was that the consumer pretty much turned their nose at those high end prices on those high end cuts. We'll see how that plays out. That's very expensive, and that's a tough one to chew on. But the slaughter cow market has been very, very strong. Will remain very strong as we continue to need lean grinding beef to mix with fattier beef to get this ground product that people in our country demand. If you have producers asking if they should sell their cows or if they should keep them another year because of calf price, don't encourage them to keep cows another year. Yeah, sure, you could get a $1,500 calf at weaning, but right now that cow's worth $1,500, and getting a good salvage value out of her with normal culling practices is appropriate. If they've got bad feed, if they've got a bad udder, if they got a bad disposition, if they're just getting old and they're producing a calf that doesn't really compare to its contemporaries because of poor production. They probably need to be sold and capture some really strong value on them in today's market. Slaughter has been down, and that's just pretty typical of when you have fewer animals, you're going to reduce slaughter. But the big number to note is beef cow slaughter is down, uh, at 14%. Well, that's part of what's driving higher slaughter cow numbers. I was actually writing something, I think yesterday. Anyway, I don't remember. I was looking at some numbers on beef and dairy cow slaughter both, and the beef cow slaughter is down because we have such strong calf prices and we don't have a whole lot of cows to begin with. But then dairy cow slaughter is also declining despite milk prices being lower than they were a year ago for the most part, or even with a year ago. Uh, though most of these dairies are doing beef on dairy cross calves now, and when they're returning 600 to 800, those calves as week old to 2 week old calves are bringing $600 to $800 a head. Excuse me. Uh, it's that can make up a lot of loss in milk. $600 to $800 a head. So they know they're still going to get to milk the cow, and even if she's just not making a ton of money in the milk, knowing that you have a $600 to $800 calf that comes out of that cow to start with is pretty hard to turn down. So they've slowed down dairy cow slaughter at the same time. That compares to when a lot of those calves were $100. A straight dairy calf now, dairy bull calf or steer calf, whatever you want to call it, a week is probably $400 to $500 a head. So just a lot more value. So that's really pulling back on that lean grinding beef that we really desperately need for ground product. Reduced slaughter has resulted in nearly a 2% decline in beef production so far. The thing is we continue to increase the weights of these cattle. We feed them a little longer. Very few of these cattle are eating our own feed less than 180 days. We've got a lot of cattle on feed 200 days now, and so we're just putting more pounds on them. So that's why beef production is not down that much. Pork production is up slightly. Things have turned around for pork producers to some degree. The broiler industry would really like to increase production, but they continue to work through issues related to infertility in male birds. So if they ever get that problem solved, I expect broiler and chicken production in general just to explode. I don't know if any of y'all been paying much attention from this is a totally different market, but the egg market. So laying hens, we've had to depopulate several very large laying hen operations. I'm talking about to the tune of over 5 million birds depopulated due to high path avian influenza. And if you've noticed, you're talking about $2 a dozen eggs. That's expensive eggs. So that's just it's part of the protein market, and so I just thought I better mention something about that while we were sitting here. Imports should remain above year-ago levels. We have a high, when Aaron discussed having a dollar that was very, very strong relative to other currencies, that encourages imports because we can buy other people's stuff, other countries' products cheaply relative to our own. We continue to need lean grinding beef, and most of the beef and veal that we import is lean grinding beef. We'll see most of that coming out of Australia and New Zealand and see how that plays out. We'll probably import more beef out of Mexico as well. The export side, I'm going to continue to see declines in exports compared to a year ago. We have expensive products. We don't have as much of it. Again, the value of the dollar is going to reduce exports. So just the alternative argument for importing more, the alternative argument comes into fewer exports of beef and veal. I don't know at what point. I guess one thing that anybody that's listening to this can think about is, what are your beef purchasing habits, and how have they changed uh, in the past year or so? Because when I've probably said this before, and I know I have, but when I started this job, I've been in this job for 12 years, and the choice box beef price, which is being shown here, when I started this job in 2012, had never been above $2. Never been above $2. And now, for the past 2 years, we've essentially been 270 or higher. And most of that time spent playing around the $3 price range. When and this is on a carcass basis. This is valued on a carcass basis. And so you think about a 900-pound carcass at $3, that's $2,700 of value in the carcass before any fabrication takes place. And of course, that increases the cost of fabrication. I mean, the overall cost is higher as you think about fabrication and those cuts. But what can the consumer withstand when we're sitting at $8 a pound average price at the retail level? You think $8 per pound average price of all beef, is it worth paying that? And I don't know the question, but all of a sudden you understand why the quarter pound burger at McDonald's is so expensive, because that quarter pound burger at McDonald's has $2 worth of beef on it. And so just thinking of it from that standpoint, you can figure out what a lot of people are doing just by thinking through your own purchasing habits for beef, or what you've done as far as meat purchases and consumption. Aaron was talking about drought situation or moisture situation, and in reality, most of the country is in very good moisture conditions. We do have some of those concerns in Kansas. If they don't get some good moisture there may not be any Flint Hill grazing type stuff. There's this time of year generally a lot of pull for animals to go into long-term grazing or summer grazing programs in Kansas. But really, that's only that really southwest region of the country, and just a little small portion of the southern plains there are into Kansas that really is struggling with drought issues. So it's good pasture conditions would appear evident here. We would think that feed prices should decline because there should be an expectation of strong grain production. Will there be heifer retention with increased forage production? We would think so. But that heifer retention really can't start until this fall, when all these spring calves, when we make decisions there. I mean, I'm actually going to preg check a bunch of cows tomorrow, or heifers that I bred. They're always for sale. But made a decision, and there will be a few people that made this same decision to buy some heifers that were fairly inexpensive at the end of last year, and they'll be in that breeding cycle, and so there will be some heifers for sale. And I got the results from the Kentucky, Tennessee, the West, the Kentucky, Tennessee livestock market in Guthrie, when they had the bred heifer sale 2 or 3 weeks ago. And those bred heifers for fall calving averaged just a hair over $3,000 a head. And so there is fairly strong demand for those females. And part of that's because there's just not a lot of them. Corn prices have been fairly steady. It's like Aaron said, there's been a lot less up and down movement, a lot less volatility in the market, in the feed grain market. and that's pretty much expected to stay the same, at least in the short term. I say in the short term, probably in the next 3 to 5 months, unless some supply disruption happens, and we can't out predict those types of things. It's still expensive to feed cattle. Some struggles there, as we move through that. Should see feed costs keeping declining. Feedlots are making some money, but they're having to spend a lot of it on buying back cattle to put back on feed. Here's the close of August feeder cattle yesterday. You can see closed at 256 on the far right hand side, but we've had a bunch of volatility in the cattle markets. Unlike the grain markets, the volatility in the feeder cattle market has been tremendous, up and down. I mean, seesaw, everything, pogo sticks. I don't care. You name it. And they've been doing that kind of song and dance. I don't expect. I think we're going to be in a fairly tight trading range for the next 2 or 3 months to finish out the August contract. So we'll see how that plays out. But the 250 to 260 range is probably where we're going to see it. Is there potential by August that we get into the 260s and maybe 260, 265? Yes. I don't think 270 is realistic though, unless something really happens that I just can't foresee. Pretty sure that's November. I don't see the letter, but anyway, I'm pretty sure I put November up. If not, it's October, but I think it's November. And again, very similar patterns. There might be reasons for people to hedge cattle at these price levels. Thinking about a lot of these calves that are being weaned in the fall, there's a really good pricing opportunity for those animals using LRP right now. And if you've got producers that want to look at things like that, be glad to visit with them and talk about it. But here's kind of the price forecast that we have looking in from August through November. I still think 5 to 6 weight steer prices are going to remain fairly solid. Strong demand for those animals. I don't see a whole lot of change in the yearling type cattle. We could see some softness at some point, which I show in November. Might be overselling that softness just a little bit right there, but anyway, with that, I think I'll stop sharing and